Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a new International Comics Crusaders on a Monday. Because Mr. Dave had to work on a Sunday. But all
So
good.
Doing the good work.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we'll be back this coming Sunday. So 2 in 1 week.
Look at that. Look at that. He's working hard. Thanks, fellas, Dave and Chris, for coming on. And as you could see who we have here, he is one of these good folks out there helping a lot of independent creators get their footing in the world of Kickstarter via the comics launch. He's an independent creator via Comics Tribe. I mean, he's done it all. He's the man. He got an awesome podcast. The one and only Tyler James. What's going on, brother?
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me on. And that intro, that snazzy intro, fired me up. I like it.
Yeah, man, that's what it's about, baby. 'Cause you got us fired up. You got the world of indie fired up with your awesome work.
Who needs coffee when you got Al?
Yeah, man. Hey, man, I drink it black, no sugar for a reason, and I show it off. So, gentlemen, how's the week been for you guys? Any new comic news before we start chit-chatting with Tyler here? Because I know Chris was talking about there was something with the Snyderverse or Snyder.
Scott Schneider has a new book out on is it on Kickstarter? I think it's on Kickstarter. Maybe Tyler can correct me there. It's either on Kickstarter. I believe it's on Kickstarter. There's Tony Daniels. Now that's really working Kickstarters at the moment.
Yeah, he's been promoting that for a while. Yeah, you know, I mean, the only thing I've read about it was it kind of it alluded to Scott moving to Kickstarter as his main gig. So I don't know.
Ooh. Really?
I mean, I guess you can only sort of milk DC for so long.
What are your thoughts on something like that, Tyler? A big name like that trying to move possibly exclusively to a Kickstarter platform?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely something that rattled around the industry a while for a little bit when he launched, and you know, the project is called Nocterra. I was checking on it for another reason earlier, but $150,000 raised, still a lot of time on the clock, and it's an interesting project, and it's the first project that Scott Snyder, I believe both Scott and Tony have done on the Kickstarter platform. So it is nothing new that big name project creators have been launching on Kickstarter. But I do think that Scott would be the highest profile, like hot guy at the time, that's so baked in and so prolific on a publishing platform for all the work that does in DC to take that project to Kickstarter. So it's interesting. It's definitely interesting.
I think what's also interesting is that he hired a very interesting person to manage his Kickstarter campaign. Do you want to jump in, Tyler?
Yeah, so I think Scott sort of shows a lot of intelligence in terms of, hey, I'm one of the best in the world at writing comics and graphic novels. What a lot of creators discover is that there is this whole other aspect of what it takes to launch a project, which is a different skill set, completely different skill set than what it takes to actually make a project. And so Scott, rather than starting from complete scratch and trying to figure it all himself, he went out and hired Camilla Jang, who ran the comics category on Kickstarter for 2.5 years, or for 2 years, and also employed one of the biggest comic book publicists in the world of comics to help do his marketing for this project to get it off with a bang. Clearly, it's paid off for them. I have no doubt that Scott and Tony would have been okay had they not done that, just based on the reputations that they built. But in terms of smoothing it out and getting it running and getting it operating like a well-oiled machine that it looks like, that seems to be a pretty smart move for them.
Yeah, but I believe it's an additional set of headaches you don't really need when you want to write and you want to create, and you want somebody who can trust, who runs the thing for you.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I was just going to say it's something I've been kind of, especially with a lot of the changes we've been seeing in the direct sale market recently, and just the industry in general. I've kind of been waiting for someone to sort of leap in and be that, like doing almost a running, basically being a Kickstarter publisher, like saying like, hey, I'm going to run your Kickstarters for you, so come to me and I'll do this. And yeah,
you know, there is an entire ecosystem and economy that have been built on the back of Kickstarter, and so there are plenty of management firms that are out there that will actually just do that. You know, hey, you hire us, we'll run your Kickstarters for you. The challenge is that most of those, like in the indie world, right? Most of the comic projects, especially for creators that aren't the Scott Snyders of the world, that don't come to this having had, you know, international bestsellers and sold millions and millions of comics in the direct market and built up that street cred. Like the launches that we're trying to do are, you know, a few $1,000s for a lot of the creators that I work with would be game changing. $10,000 would be amazing. $25,000 would be like, you know, shattering like all perceived conceptions of what's possible. And that's great. The problem is that doesn't leave a lot of room on the smaller side of launches for a professional company that's legitimate, that's going to come in and love this thing and push this thing as hard as you would want to it. The margins really doesn't tend to be there. And so that's really where a lot of what I've been doing with Comics Launch tries to fill that gap, is that there's a lot of creators that have no, like, hey, I've been learning all this stuff to make something really good, but I don't have those skills to launch it. It turns out like the skills and the stuff that you need to know and the stuff that you need to do to actually launch something are not like it's harder to become a really good artist. It's harder to become a great writer, right? It's not hard. It's just that most creators don't have that skill set, haven't built it up, don't have the step-by-step, don't have the plans. And so that's really where Comics Launch tries to fill in that gap for those creators, because yes, you can go out and hire somebody to run and launch your Kickstarter, but they're either going to want a piece, and usually a big piece of that IP, which you might not want to give up because this thing is just getting started and you don't want to have like a long.
Is that a typical thing within that type of business scheme where, okay, I'll help you, but I need X percentage of ownership? Is that standard?
Usually it's they want their fees covered, like they want to be paid and they want a piece. Most of the managers, and it might not be a huge piece, it might be 2%, 5% or whatever, but it's a piece. You know, it's a piece, and well,
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's like it's a skill set. It's just as a publisher, like I know companies like some companies like IDW and Dark Horse, you know, they want full on. It's just like even if they're not going to pay you upfront money.
Yeah.
And you're going to do it like very almost image style, they still want to own 50% of your IP.
Right. Yeah. And you know, part of the reason they're able to command that is simply the fact that by putting Dark Horse or IDW on the front of your book, that's going to determine where in the catalog your book is going to be listed, and that's going to significantly increase the likelihood of retailers that have a 20+ year experience of purchasing from that trusted publisher are going to even give your book a second look or a first look. So, you know, comics is one of those weird industries where, yeah, like publishers, a small number of publishers can actually command that, but for, you know, the annals of comic book history have also been, you know, rife with awful publishing deals.
Absolutely.
And the great thing about a platform like Kickstarter, especially for younger creators, is that the more you can demonstrate, like the less you need a publisher, the more likely the publishers are to be interested in working with you. Yeah. And so when you can, you know, hey, when you can get $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 over a few launches, and build an audience on the back of a platform like Kickstarter of even, a few hundred to a few thousand fans, like that can move the needle, and that can be the difference. And so you do see a lot of publishers that are now sort of scrolling through Kickstarter looking for projects that are popping, and that's where they're farming their talent, and that's where they're farming some of their books.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more. Particularly, I wouldn't be surprised if Scott Snyder's Kickstarter turns up at Image Comics.
I believe it's already tied.
I
think it's tied to Image, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the plan. It's going to be published. It's going to be published by Image.
Yep.
See, that's what it gets weird to me. It's like Kickstarter is like it's Kickstarter. So if you why don't you just publish it by Image? Like it's almost as though they're just saying, give us the money so that we can produce this comic, and then we're going to release it through Image Comics.
Well, every campaign is a little different, I think. In this one in particular, there's a sort of special version of the book that they're offering. You also can't get signed books through Image and sketchbooks through Image. And Scott has some well-received courses and trainings and workshops and things that they've done. And so he's offering those as some higher tier limited pledges.
I think also the script or something, script pages or something.
Yeah, it's actually a really unique book that he's putting out through this. So the product that might come out through Image may actually be different than what's offered here. And the other thing about the Image deal that, most, I think, fans probably don't appreciate, and it may be different for the Scott Snyders of the world. Image has been, known to play ball a little bit for certain creators to get certain projects, to make certain projects happen. But when you talk to, a lot of creators that do Image work, it's usually the writer that's not having any, like the writer just expects, all right, we'll get paid on the back end. Sure. But the artist may have to, have several books banked in advance, and a Tony Daniel of the world, you look at what his page rate might be. If he's going to go and work 3 issues in advance on a series like this, Image does not pay page rates. Even to the Tony Daniels of the world. I mean, occasionally, there's talk that sometimes these things get worked out, but in most cases, the Image deal is a back end deal after your book releases. And so, to have a Tony Daniels go 3-4 months without having any funds come in, that can be tough. And what Kickstarter can do is it can fill the gap on that creation side through pre-orders, through extras and other things, so that, all right, now we can fund that. And then when it comes to actually getting it out into publishers' hands, publishers do not, into retailers by and large don't love ordering directly from Kickstarter. It doesn't work for their model. Their model works much better through Diamond. And so, and Diamond works with publishers. And so there is a strong, depending upon where you're going, if you're going direct to consumer, Kickstarter is an awesome way to do it. If you're trying to get into comic shops and also have this book sort of be on the lists and all that stuff, you need to go through Diamond. And so my philosophy tends to be, it's not this or that. It's this and that, or how do we layer these different platforms and these different channels so that there's more readership and there's more funding and there's more revenue for everyone, so that we can get more books that we love.
Yeah, I know you've been doing this for a long time, and I know that you've had some retailers support you. Like I noticed, remember early on, like Larry's Comics supported you quite heavily. But generally, what do you think? Like when you just said like retailers don't tend to support Kickstarter, I know a few creators who offer a retailer level, on the Kickstarter, but just generally, I mean, why do you think it is that retailers are hesitant to kick in? Is it because the lag time, or do you think it's because they got to pay before they see the product?
I think it's a combination. It's the complete opposite of how retailers' funding models work for most other things. In most cases, they can order their books the books get delivered and they have like, I think 2 weeks to sort of pay for that last week. So in the direct market, they technically can make their orders, sell the books, and then use the money that from those sold books to pay for their orders and to go towards some next orders. And that's sort of how that works. The Kickstarter model is completely flipped. It's okay, retailer, take capital out of your pocket, put it into my pocket. And then most books, even the fast ones are 2-3 months away from actually being delivered. And then if they're going to be late, like most retailers just aren't. I don't know any retailers that's just sitting on capital that they're trying to find a home for it. Most of them, so if they're investing in Kickstarter projects, that's books that they're not ordering this month that can be out next month and sold immediately. So that's part of the reason for it. But that being said, we try to offer at least one, if not a couple, retailer tiers for all of our Kickstarter projects, and we tend to sell, anywhere between 2 and 10 retailer packages for when we do it, because our roots at Comics Tribe was we started by part of the reason we were able to get a diamond distribution deal was because we proved that our books would sell in some indie friendly retailers before we even pitched our book to Diamond. And we actually, included some quotes from real retailers who liked our books and had some success when we sold them to them directly, and then they sold it in their shops. So we have established over the years some nice direct connections to retailers who do support our Kickstarter projects. And we try to offer things like shop exclusive prints, where we'll take an image and then we'll put the shop logo on it as well, package that with what they're getting, and offer a discount for buying a few more. And that tends to be attractive to some retailers as well. So I'm not saying don't do it. It can actually be a great way to significantly add, thousands to your launches. But the idea of Kickstarter replacing Diamond isn't going to happen.
No, I don't see it as replacing Diamond.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We had Jimmy Palmiotti on. Yeah. And I found, particularly during this whole COVID-19 pandemic, literally every comic I've ordered, every dime I've spent in the last 5-6 months has been exclusively through Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And more and more, what I'm finding is I follow my friends, and now I'm starting to see projects that I would have never have seen in a direct sale market store offered on Kickstarter, and they're being sold on Kickstarter. And it's almost as though if a publisher comes to them and says, "Hey, we'd love to sell your book into the direct sale market," that's kind of almost becomes gravy for them. Whereas they found a very nice market selling through Kickstarter, and these aren't named creators. These aren't creators that you would. Even now I've put on projects that, to be honest, I can't even remember the creators' names, because I looked through it and I went, "This looks great."
Yeah,
and I've ordered it. So I think Kickstarter allows you to promote your book to your audience far better than a copy of previews can.
Right,
you get your tiny little here's your cover, and here's your little blurb. And on Kickstarter, they get to see several pages. They get to see the created, usually a video of some kind. And so the information, and then you can make your mind up, and then you order it. So I just see it as being a completely separate platform, and just a completely different way of getting comics to market.
Yeah, and reach a different audience. Every time we've launched, it always surprises me how, yes, you'll see some returning friends, some people that but every launch, if you do it right, you're going to attract a new audience. Some people are going to discover you. And one of the things that was pretty interesting, and sort of a mindset or a myth thing is that gets bounded about, and is occasionally you'll see, especially in creator communities, you'll see the occasional sort of struggling indie creator really complain about the fact that Scott Snyder or somebody or Todd McFarlane is launching on Kickstarter, right? And it's like, oh, that's not what Kickstarter's for. They're rich. They don't need the money. Like you hear all of the Kickstarters for the person that needs it. Like it's for the indie person. Like, and they get really, really defensive about it. And then and that defensiveness is coming from fear, right? What's the fear? The fear is that, oh, well, if I have to compete with Scott Snyder, I'm going to lose every time. But what's awesome and amazing, and unlike any other platform really out there, certainly not Amazon or the direct market or just Comixology, etc., is that other creators, especially big name creators launching on Kickstarter, can actually be a godsend for your campaign. There's a creator, David Pepos, just launched a new series called the OZ, which was his first Kickstarter campaign. Awesome. And he found out like the night before that Scott Snyder was launching right at the same time. And initially he was like, oh man, this is going to be no one's going to talk about my book. But what ended up happening is it ended up being the absolute best thing that could have happened to his Kickstarter campaign because, and you've probably noticed this when you back Kickstarter campaigns, every time you back a Kickstarter campaign, Kickstarter shows you some other projects that are like that other people that are backing your project have backed or that you might like. And then every time a project that you've backed is sending out updates, at the end of those updates, there's posting and sharing other projects that, hey, if you're backing this, you'd like this. So the fact that Scott Snyder launched, had 1,000 people back within the day, he got a ton of free publicity through the Kickstarter recommendation engine that was recommending his project along that. And so it's absolutely not true that it's like this zero-sum game where, someone backing Scott means they're not going to back you. In fact, a lot of what you've probably found, Dave, is like the more good projects there are on Kickstarter, the more you're going to be backing projects on Kickstarter. And it's not that you have like, all right, what's my one project I get to back this month? Most people just don't operate like that. Just like when you walk into a comic shop, yeah, there might be a week where there's one good book that you want. There might be a week where there's 10. You don't necessarily, stick to one and consistently and have the same pile every single time, right?
Well, I think of it as Kickstarter being such a much wider audience actually than the comic market. So if you think inside that bubble of the direct sell market and you're thinking, oh wow, oh my God, Scott Snyder's doing a Kickstarter, better not put anything out. The reality is that you might have a project that might appeal to more people outside that bubble.
Yeah,
and I liked some of Scott's earlier stuff, like his the Vampire Tales, the American Vampire, and I liked his early run on Batman. But after a while, I kind of like,
it's very good.
It's just too much. It's like, all right, I've had enough Batman actually. Right now, I'm kind of Batman fatigue. so to me, unless it's something amazing, I'm not like the news that Scott Snyder's doing a Kickstarter doesn't make me go, oh, well, I'm going to still be looking at the, more independent material. So, so I think that might, the greater Kickstarter audience is probably much bigger than those who are actually just coming for, there's my favorite Batman or Superman or Spider-Man creator is doing a Kickstarter.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is important to realize is that the hardest sale to make is that first time you back a Kickstarter project, because you got to log in and you got to set up an account, and even if it's just a couple of clicks, there's friction there. But every launch after, or every project you want to back after that, it's like, I'm already logged in. My browser's got me cookied. It's 2 clicks and I'm done. I get a woohoo and I'm on. And then I don't even have to pay for it unless it funds. And that's going to be later. And so by that time, I've already forgotten about it. And so it's like, it is one of the genius things of why Kickstarter works so well. It's like you get that immediate gratification of, I'm a backer and I'm a part of this thing. And you don't have to pay for a while, which is part of the reason why it's pretty sticky. But what the data shows is like a significant portion of people that back projects on Kickstarter go on to back multiple projects. So when we looked at like the Todd McFarlane launch that happened a few months ago, where he raised, over $1 million, I forget how many $1 million he raised for a new Spawn toy. Well, he brought over 1,000 first-time backers to the Kickstarter platform. And data says a lot of them are going to be sticking around and backing more projects and more projects and more projects over the course of their lifetime. And so that's why I celebrate when celebrities and big names launch projects on Kickstarter, because I know they're just, they're adding more. It becomes a bigger pie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was always my approach to comics in general. Back when there were more readers in the direct sale market. Like, I'm not a naysayer, by the way. I think that the comic market is going to continue to grow and stay strong. I think it's just a direct sale market, and sort of like the Marvels and DCs, and those will suffer. I think the more independent titles, and if you look at Scholastic, they're just expanding bigger and bigger and bigger. So comics aren't going away. But I do think that in the past, like when I first got into publishing, I could do it because Marvel and DC had such an audience that were beginning to, as they age out, they had nothing, so they just disappeared.
Yeah.
As independents came in and were started to do projects that like we wanted to do, that was kind of older material, they now had something to move on to. They had now had, like, we're leaving comics. Marvel and DC were pulling a new audience in, and as they left, we could benefit from it. The problem that the industry had, the big thing that occurred, was Marvel and DC wanted to keep them, and so they started to age up, and they started to ignore the younger audience, which is what Scholastic came in and swooped up and picked up now.
Yeah. But you look at some of the numbers for some of those graphic novels like Dogman and the stuff that Smile and what Raina does, and even like the Amulet things, like those bookstore things are like these are monster hits. And
they like, I think Raina's last book had something like an 800,000 or 1 million print run on the first edition, and so and the latest Dog Boy gets like at least 1 million copy print run on its first printing.
Yeah, it's remarkable, and so I think you may be right that they may have filled the gap there from in terms of training the youngest of readers. And I know Marvel and DC have made strides at reaching that with certain brands and certain other lines, but who knows? Maybe they've sort of decided that you know what, their bread and butter is in that, like, preteen through teenage, that prime them for the movies and everything else, and the books will be there. But yeah, I think the world is like the cool thing about comics is like it's a big wild broad world, and in terms of like diversity of content, I think you could argue that Kickstarter is probably a better representative of the totality of what's out there in the world of comics than even a comic book shop or even your Barnes and Noble and stuff.
Oh, definitely. I think it was like Jimmy was talking about, he's shipping copies of his books all over the world. So, which your direct market retailer is not going to have. They're not going to have people ordering from Singapore and Hong Kong and Japan. It's just
awesome. So I want to get on to our next segment here, because I know that Tyler has some duties to partake in a little bit. He told me about. So I want to start getting into what Comics Launch is all about and how you've been helping creators with this awesome program. So Tyler, let's get into some of the early origins of Comics Launch. Why did you start this program?
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about that, because it's been probably one of the most rewarding things that I've done. But so Comics Launch, I started a podcast in 2015 called Comics Launch. And the goal of this podcast was pretty singular. I sort of said right there on that first 0 episode, I pointed out the fact which I thought was, a pretty sad fact, that at the time when I started the podcast, more projects failed to fund than funded. The success rate was a little bit under 50%. And so I sort of declared that the reason this podcast exists, the mission for this podcast, is to change that, because I know how much work goes into not just making a comic, but then actually launching a Kickstarter project, going to the mat, trying to get it out into the world. And to do all of that, to go through all of that and then not have your project succeed is gutting. And there were creators early on that, you know what, they tried it once and didn't work out, and they walked away from it.
So how many projects in were you before you even launched?
Yeah, so by the time when I started Comics Launch, I had already raised over $125,000 on the platform. So so that was like 6 or 7 projects. And the reason part of the reason I launched Comics Launch as a podcast was that it was sort of an outgrowth of what I had already been doing for several years at the start of Comics Tribe. Comics Tribe is the publishing and graphic novel imprint that I co-founded with Stephen Forbes back in 2011. And when we started Comics Tribe, we were basically starting a small press imprint from the ground up. And so one of the things that we decided to do to sort of differentiate ourselves at Comics Tribe was to sort of just document the process. And so on Comics Tribe, we basically, you could go back and read the articles and watch us evolve from, a couple of books that we were working on, but no distribution, no retailers, no connections, no real industry cred, to raising hundreds of thousands of dollars on Kickstarter, getting them in worldwide distributed into the direct market, establishing a retailer network, like all of that stuff. And we sort of I would document the process along the way. But I sort of got into this habit of I'd gotten away from sort of writing the articles and doing that stuff, because all of what I was doing to try to continue to grow Comics Launch with the Kickstarters, with the media outreach, with the marketing and doing other sort of strategies to just get bigger awareness on our books, like that was sucking all of my time as a publisher. And at the same time, I also started seeing that some of our books, like And Then Emily Was Gone and Oxymoron and some of and then Sync, like our books were starting to get the acclaim that I felt was higher than our sales. And when I had to look in the mirror at myself, it's like, well, who's like, if these books are good, but they're not selling the numbers that you think they should be selling, well, you're the publisher. That's your job, right? And so that sort of caused me to go on like a deep dive journey of just how do I up our marketing game? How do I increase our sales? How do I build a bigger audience so that our books perform better? And so part of that led to me to doing a lot of research and a lot of listening to a lot of podcasts outside of the world of comics, but infusing things in marketing and other things like that to try, and then applying that to comics. And so by the time 2015 rolled around, middle of 2015, I saw that the questions that I was getting asked most and the content that I was putting out, or that I'd put out on Comics Tribe over the past few years, that was getting the most traction and I was hearing the most feedback about from creators was Kickstarter related stuff. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was just the fact that I didn't want to write. I didn't felt like I had time to do the blog post thing again, but I really wanted to try my hand at the podcasting. And so my goal, I launched Comics Launch back in 2015 when the success rate was less than 50%, and have been doing a weekly show ever since. And what's pretty cool is if you actually go to Kickstarter and look at the stats right now, the success rate for comics is now 59.8%.
Wow.
So that success rate has jumped almost 10 percentage points. It becomes even cooler when you realize that the overall success rate for projects on Kickstarter has dropped in that same time period. So every other category has been stable or has dropped Comics has gone up and up and up and up and up. Now, I certainly can't take all or even most of the credit for it, but I love being a part of that movement, right? And that's sort of what I've been doing. And so, podcasting since 2015 with a weekly free show. You can get it wherever you listen to podcasts. And then what I discovered through it is that there were some creators that wanted more, and that there was still that lack of, all right, you know, you can listen to these podcasts on a week, but you know, what kind of accountability can we have? Like, is there a process, a step-by-step process that if I worked a little bit closer with creators, coached them through it, that they could get similar results on their launches? And so, 2016, I brought a group through what was called the Comics Launch course, which is now at the foundation of Comics Launch Pro. And I've been basically taking creators through my process for building engaged audiences, launching awesome Kickstarter projects to them on Kickstarter. Then we even get into, for creators that are ready for it, sales channels outside of Kickstarter once your book is funded. And then I even provide some training on how to throw gas on the fire through paid traffic strategies using things like Facebook ads, and just get things going on autopilot for your audience building, and to, you know, drive a significant more traffic to your Kickstarter campaigns. And so there's a program in a community called Comics Launch Pro, which has a couple hundred creators in it right now that have had tremendous amount of success on the Kickstarter platform. And so I get to every month coach those creators and work with them on their launches. And what's nice about it is it provides a nice positive feedback loop where, you know, the more launches, the more data we have access to, the bigger a network of creators that we work with, the more that just feeds into itself, and it becomes this ever-growing ball of success. And so, you know, while that success rate has been growing for comics overall of 59.8%, our members are funding at about 95% for their launches, which is pretty cool.
That's great. That's brilliant. And don't forget, I mean, you know, don't underestimate yourself as well. That, you know, you're in many respects, as far as like comics in general is concerned, you've shown yourself a trailblazer in a way. And, you know, it's like, you know, every success of yours will influence and encourage somebody else to at least attempt theirs.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that ripple effect happen as well. I mean, there are creators that are launching now that I know that they're going to, like, that are in our community, and they're going to inspire 200 or 300 other creators to do the same. And if I look back on it, you know, part of the reason that the format I took was a course and actually a community was because, you know, I wouldn't be here if I didn't sort of get myself out of a rut in a job that I was no longer loving, and, you know, a social life that wasn't inspiring. Like, I took a script writing course back in, you know, 2006 or something like that, 2005, 2006, after having not done a single thing with comics in over 2 years. I used to, you know, I started when I was like 12, and just making comics, and did it religiously for many years, but college and post college just took me out of it. But that got me back. That course, that community got me back into it. And so, you know, there's so many great resources out there. There's so many YouTube videos you can watch, other things. But for me, when I really want to make a change, or I really want to go all in, having like a group and a community and a system to follow, like that, and new skills to develop, like that's what I really respond to. And so to be able to create that, to hopefully get other creators going and moving again, and sort of change their trajectory, like it's pretty inspiring for me. And, you know, I love what I do. And the cool thing is I've been able to sort of do this, being a full-time creator, for the last, I think I left my full-time work in end of 2016, I think.
Wow. See, how did that feel? That's something I've been wanting to ask you. So how did that feel that day when you could say, goodbye, day job, I'm living the dream for real?
Oh man. It's funny. The very first day of doing that, right? It's the very first day. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm doing this. Very first day, it was a Monday, starting the week fresh. I like had a big plan of attack, was going to go into it. And I needed to, like, the first thing I needed to do was go just order something online, and I needed my wallet to do it. And I couldn't find my wallet. And I spent the first like 45 minutes of like my first day of like something like not being able to find my wallet, which I then meant like I then took to, I was like superstitiously making the, oh, does this mean like I'm like I am never going to be financially secure ever again, and all that, like so
you're like,
so,
God
yeah.
is giving me a sign.
Yeah, it's a sign. Do I need to call my boss back? Do I need to take a job mopping, whatever? Like
that wasn't my letter, boss. Somebody sent that and playing a prank on you.
Yeah. So that happened. And then I just kind of like shook it. I'm like, you know what? That'll be a good story to tell on a podcast someday, which, so there you have it.
You saved it to us. Oh,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the best part about it is, that there's not a moment in my day when I work that I'm not fully locked in on what I'm doing. Right. And, I tried to perform like I was a performer, I tried to perform well at my work and previous jobs and tried to, always want to do a good job and everything. But there's always this sort of nagging thing of what you really want to be working on is X, Y, and Z. I have to get through this 8 hours of working on somebody else's dreams in order to have the luxury of making my own dreams happen. Right. Oh, yeah. But
we were just talking about that before you came on air.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's funny. But the truth is, and this is something that for those of you that are sort of in this position of, all right, I've got a day job, but I know I want to transition out of it. That mentality of, well, as soon as I get rid of this day job, my productivity is going to soar, my creativity is going to, like, everything's going to be going to the umpteenth level. It doesn't happen exactly like that, because what you will realize is once you are sort of full-time in charge of not just what you're creating, but how you're supporting your family, every dollar that comes in is created by you in some fashion. Like you have to create, you don't have to just do the work. You have to create the work and make all of those decisions. Like that actually takes a big creative toll. Like it requires some of that same creative energy that you previously had the luxury of. Okay, when I show up to my work, I'm not creating everything from the ground up. I know what I got to do. I got to do it. And so there's and so then when you leave work, it's like, all right, I'm on fire. Now I can use all of my creative activity for stuff. Like I sort of found that it's like, oh man, like I do 8 hours of this. There isn't that second, wave of, all right, now I can work, like before I was doing, 9 to 5 at the day job. And then, if nothing was going on, I could, and before I was sort of had as much family responsibilities, I could do 9 to 5 and then 5 to 9 and back, and then back and forth. And I found that that's not actually the case. It's not it wasn't, and that was an adjustment a little bit. But so, yeah, so don't just assume that, and I want to share that to people to say that, like, that there is sort of that grass is always greener sort of thing. And if you are currently in a day job, which allows you to hire an artist or affords you the luxury to work on a project that doesn't have to make you any money for years, like that's actually a luxury. I had the luxury of building Comics Tribe on the side and reinvesting every dollar that came in back into Comics Tribe and not having to use that to build, not having to use that to support my family or buy food or anything like that. I could just have that to feed itself and to grow itself and thrive. So that was a luxury. So for all of you that are hoping to make that transition today, that's great. But it's not your day job that's holding you back from it. Your day job is probably the thing that's making your future dreams possible. So that's the mindset that I encourage people to take.
So now that you're like a full-time creator from home, right? Or do
Yeah.
you have an office? What's a good time management recommendation then for somebody that finally got out on their own, especially with family? What's a good time management
Well, yeah.
recommendation?
So, I mean, the COVID, it's funny. At the beginning of this year, my wife and I were talking about the beginning of this year in January, we were discussing, and sort of trying to debate whether or not it would make sense for our toddler when he got a little bit older and was going into the preschool class. Like, do we send him 4 days instead of the 3 that we were currently sending? We were sending like part-time for 3 days a week. And we were considering, maybe 4 days is it. Well, ever since COVID, he's been home, not going back. Now. He's home every day, and so in terms of, which meant that like I had actually significantly less time to work because my wife also works from home, so we both have that luxury. But we split the daycare duties, and so after he wakes up from his nap, my day's over in terms of working, and I'm on the boy duty, and so that's where a couple of things that have really been helpful for me is and processes that I've been working on over time is just limit the number of projects that you're working on. And I'm a recovering project hoarder, but I've found that one project executed and implemented and exploited to 100% is worth so much more than a dozen projects that we're about 50% all the way done, or 40% or 30%. Like, and so reducing the number of projects that I'm tackling at any given time, always being focused in on just trying to get the top 3 biggest priorities done each and every day, and making sure that those top 3 priorities tie to your goals for the week, your goals for the month, your goals for the quarter, and your goals for the year. And if every single day you're doing 3 things that are connected in some way to your goals for the year, the chances that you're going to have a killer year go up. And then the other thing that I sort of really implemented this year, especially with the comics launch stuff that has really helped, is focusing more on anything that can be automated, systematized, do that. Because and so in the past where creators where I was doing a lot of like live workshops and in-person things that required me to be in one spot for 3 hours, I've sort of gone away from that, and instead sort of moved some of my better trainings to things that can be accessed at specific times for the right creators, but don't require me to actually be there. And the result of that has actually been way more creators are going through my trainings because they don't have to have their schedules sync up with my schedules, and way more creators are enrolling in Comics Launch Pro, which is great for us. And the other fun thing about this whole COVID thing, that's Kickstarter related, and that's for those creators out there, is projects on Kickstarter have actually been succeeding at a higher rate and raising more funding than they were before COVID. And there's a number of reasons for that, but that's actually a pretty great thing that's going on. And so as disrupted as the whole comics industry has been, one thing that hasn't really been negatively hurt is the creators that I work with that are launching projects on Kickstarter. They're actually crushing it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have people watching here and commenting, and that's a shout out to Joe Mulvey, right? And then we also have Einar
Peterson, probably.
Peterson.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's up? What's up, Joe? What's up, Einar?
This is their comment here. Let me add that.
Yep. I'm working on the next launch with Joe, which is going to be coming out from Comics Drive pretty soon on Kickstarter as well. So
what's the name of that book? Can you?
That's going to be the trade, or the awesome new hardcover for Wailing Blade.
Oh, nice. That's a dope book. Yes. I remember meeting the creator. What was it? At San Diego, I believe. Or was it Rhode Island? One of those two.
Yeah. Rich Duick, Joe Mulvey,
Yeah.
dark fantasy book. And, I'm now sort of, make no bones about it, I'm in my die cut hardcover fix right now. We just did this
Oh
hardcover
my God.
with Ryan K. Lindsay's book She, which has this
Oh, dude,
sort of
look at
cool die cut, right? So we've got a die cut coming for Wailing Blade as well.
that is a beautiful book, though. That looks sexy. Who came up with that idea with the die cut in that way on a hardcover? That's very nice, man.
Yeah. So I basically this is art by Chris Panda, and this is a book written by Ryan Lindsay, and the designs that Chris did. There's this sort of cool concept for this mask that she had that sort of like would sort of fade on and fade out, and you could see her eyes behind it. And I just thought that was really, really cool. And as I was sort of playing around with what we're going to do for the actual cover, I looked at some hardcovers, and I wanted to do something that really helped this book sort of stand out from the pack. And I'm always trying to find ways to push our printers to use the best of their capabilities and just make something that's a really unique, like awesome, visually compelling book. And so we did that. And so I sort of pitched the idea to Chris and Ryan. Chris did all the tough work of actually, figuring out how the layers would work. And then we worked with Sam Amborn at Print Lore to see if this thing would actually be possible. And it turned out great. So
Sexy book, man. So when are we going to be able to get that in hand?
Yeah, you can actually get that right now. You can go over to comicstribe.com/she, SHE. And these books, they were funded on Kickstarter. We launched right the week everything shut down. And it ended up being about a little over 2-week launch, and it was our most backed graphic novel project yet. So, despite going down during the pandemic, but it's available now. We have a few of the extras and some of the cool bonuses and signed things as well. But you can go order it. It's actually on Indiegogo on demand right now. So we're trying that platform out as well. But you can check that out if you like.
And when's the next enrollment for Comics Launch?
Yeah, so the best thing to do if you're interested in Comics Launch Pro is just to go to comicslaunch.com/roadmap. I put together a free resource which creators can grab that basically, here's the path towards from start to funded, and the journey that sort of we take creators on inside of Comics Launch Pro. But whether you join us or not, there's certain key things that every successful comic book creator crowdfunder does, and so I just sort of lay those bullets out for you. And then once you grab that roadmap, you'll get an invite to the next time we open for enrollment, and you'll get and there's some free training, and there's a workshop and a masterclass and other things that you can get. And I try to, it's weird. I've been doing this for long enough that creators enroll when they're ready to enroll, and sometimes that's all right. I need this now, and sometimes I had someone that enrolled in Comics Launch Pro that had been on my email list for 4 years. Right. And it's just, now's the time. And so, I've been, I've been in this game long enough that, it's really, just something that we try to improve and keep getting better and better as we go. But, when the time is right, those resources and those skills are there for you. And that's really the great thing about being a creator now at this time. It's like, if you have weaknesses, if you have areas that aren't your strengths, there are people out there that can show you the way, and you don't have to sort of bang your head against the wall if you're struggling to learn certain things.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine who took part in your most recent introduction class, and I know he's going to be signing up for the pro.
That's awesome.
He thought it was great.
Yeah, we've had we had 13 new members this month so far, and it's growing at a nice clip this year. And what's fun, one thing that is kind of nice that we implemented this year, because every month now there's between 6 and a dozen creators in our community that have projects live on Kickstarter, and so we've actually sort of every month we break out like a little subgroup of those creators so that they have a little bit of, behind the scenes support. Hey, I'm trying this today. What are you trying? All right, who wants to set, like, who's up for a cross promotion? Like, it's one of the things when I first started the Comics Launch course that kept coming up from creators that had already launched on Kickstarter. Maybe even they were successful, but they talk about how lonely it is to have a project on live where it's like, it feels like, you believe in this thing so much. You're so passionate about this one thing, and the rest of the world is maybe like, eh. and so it's so it can be very helpful to not have to be going through that alone. And so, being able to facilitate that, it can be is something that we've been able to do for people, which is great.
Yeah, Comic Crusaders, I'm always open to receiving any Kickstarter alerts. You guys let me, you need a signal boost. We're here to support and show the love. 100. I'm not picky like that either, And then I know our Peterson says Comics Launch is great, especially that you can do things self-paced, and it's very inspiring stuff.
Thanks, Einar. Yeah, it's a hybrid model that we do. So I lay out my program and systems with short videos and trainings, and take this action steps and checklists that you can download, and blueprints and resources and things like that. And creators can go through those at their own pace. But then we also built in each month, we have a training, like a live training that's Kickstarter coaching, and then another one that's for audience growth. And so I run those sort of live in real time, and it's been fun. Like, the other nice benefit of the whole COVID season here is that our attendance on those trainings have been way up, because it's like, well, I can't go to conventions. I'm not interacting with creators any other way. Let's come hang out and talk Kickstarter strategy in the form of a live coaching session. So it's been a lot of fun to run those. I've been doing Zoom before it was cool, man.
I hear you, but you've been all over the place. Because I remember me being in Massachusetts before you even started doing a lot of this stuff. I've seen you grow from being this man at the table, pushing your books, inviting everybody to check out the stuff and to see how you've grown. Myself inspires me as an entrepreneur as well. So good stuff, man. God bless. Keep going forward. It's amazing to see the growth, and I expect to see a lot more of you. And your podcast blew up because you really got a good niche market that you're selling to there too as well. So, you got the strategies, man.
It sounds like you're cultivating that atmosphere that I experienced when I first started publishing. All the independents at the time were all very friendly people. Yeah. It would be like, hey, can I do a swap ad with you? Yeah, let's do swap ads. And everyone was trying to sort of like, help each other, like, hey, particularly if you're in different territories. And it sounds like you're cultivating something very similar to that.
And that's a great thing.
Yeah. Always good.
I mean, that is another reason why I think comics is special on Kickstarter. It's that comic creators are also, some of the biggest supporters of Kickstarter campaigns, right? And I follow dozens and dozens of creators on Kickstarter, and when a book pops, like, I'll see half a dozen people that I follow support a book. That makes me want to check it out, and so that's why finding communities and it's tough, because I think comic book creators tend to disproportionately be more introverts and more likely to be sort of in on our own thing, and we can spend 12 hours working on by ourselves and not feel any different about it. But some of the things that makes the biggest difference is actually being a part of a community, and being a part of communities, and that really makes a big difference when you do get into the crowdfunding game. So I'm excited to see this all continue to grow and to continue to see things thrive on Kickstarter and beyond.
Excellent. There we go. So again, just let everybody know where to follow you. I know it's been scrolling, but some people need to hear it. So if you could let them know.
Yeah. Wherever you listen to podcasts, check out Comics Launch, COMIX launch.com, or comicslaunch.com is another place to go. And if you want that Kickstarter roadmap, just go to comicslaunch.com/roadmap. And then I will also plug the stuff that we're doing at Comics Tribe. You can head over to shop.comicstribe.com and check out some of our books that are available, and be on the lookout for Wailing Blade die cut hardcover, which is coming to Kickstarter very soon.
Woo, you heard it there, folks. I'll make sure to share all those wonderful links on the post.
Wow.
Once it goes. I mean, it's already live, but on the repost, I share the links so everybody knows where to go. with that, Tyler, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, to join us today. So may you have an awesome and blessed day, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Say,
All right.
Thanks for
And
joining,
then,
Tyler.
thanks,
Cheers,
Jim.
man.
yeah, guys. So with that, let me just close out the show.
Thanks.
Dave, Chris, as always, it's a pleasure to join my brothers from the ICC. It's been a great program. So Sunday we're gonna hook up again, right? Will we have a guest? Is it official
No, we're
yet?
actually no. So
Okay.
so Chris and myself, we're going to be talking about the very sort of hot topic and sticky topic of created by, who gets the credit, who does the creation.
Man. He's
We're
trying to start
we're going to get
arguing.
into. Well, no, we're not going to get but we're going to get into that and how different it can be and how
Oh,
that's
definitely. I want to see this in
structured.
the chat. People are gonna go nuts on this one.
Yeah, it is. I think there's people who will pull their hair out, and there's going to be some. Well, I think we might have a couple of controversial things to say about it.
Well, I'm gonna do as I did today. So if there's any comments that stand out, I'm gonna go ahead and throw them on the screen for everybody to view. We may comment on it, we may not, but everybody will see it. All right. So with that, again, fellas, thank you. Everybody, please tune in this coming Sunday at noon live on Periscope, YouTube, Twitch, you name it, we there. We're on your favorite streaming platform everywhere. Al Mega, Chris Buse, and Dave Elliott, ICC. Hasta la próxima, everyone. Bye.